Natan Sharansky, against the motion.
You know, in life, a disadvantage can sometimes be advantage. Take being shot. I can assure you that in Soviet prison, being shot was a huge advantage. And not only because punishing cells were very small, but because the food is rationed and clothes come in one size. So for tall people, they're always hungry, and clothes simply doesn't cover their body to protect them from cold. But for people of my size, it was easier with hunger, and I always had an extra cloth to cover myself from the cold. And the winters are very cold in Gulag. There we were praying for global warming. So one can think that living under totalitarian regime is a big disadvantage. Of course, I'm very happy that my daughters were born in freedom. But sometimes I really think that having experience of living in a fair society, I have a big advantage. Because I will never take freedom for granted. I will never think that grass on the other side can be greener. I will never say what was said by one so-called human rights officer of the United Nations 2 years ago in Baghdad, when he was explaining why under Saddam Hussein was better. He said, you know, under Saddam, if only you give away your freedom of thought and expression, you're physically more or less okay. Now, only the one who never had to give away his freedom of thought and expression can say such a thing. People who lived in fair societies have different perspective on the advantages of democracy. And when I say democracy, exactly as all the colleagues for or against said, democracy is not about elections. Stalin had elections. He did pretty well there. And Hitler not only had elections, but as just now was said, he has opposition. He was elected democratically, but nobody will think that Third Reich is a democracy. America is a strong democracy because it has all these institutions of civil society, free press, independent courts, and so on. Because when I am speaking about democracy, I mean the society which, as I call, can pass down square test. You can come to the center of your city. You can speak your mind. You can express your opinions, and you will not be punished. You will not be arrested. You will not be harassed. That's free society. So is promoting of the free institutions of free society, like free press or independent opposition, independent courts, is promotion of these institutions in the world is a bad idea? Of course not, because that's exactly what America was doing. When you defeated Germany and Japan in the Second World War, you spent enormous efforts, economical, intellectual, financial, to promote democracy. And today, Japan and Germany is not a threat. Take Russia. When Russia was part of the totalitarian Soviet system, it was your worst enemy. When Soviet Union fell apart and Russia went towards freedom, it almost became your ally. Today, when freedom is there in retreat, and in a big retreat, it becomes again a threat to America. And that's true about every part of the world. Take Venezuela, you take North Korea, you take Iran. But wherever there is a threat to America, it means that democracy is there and retreat. If Middle East today is a dangerous place, it's not because of democracy. It's because in the last 60 years, when democracy was spread to Germany and to Japan and to Spain and to Latin America and to South Asia and to Eastern Europe and even to Russia, it was never spread to Middle East. And one can say, but you cannot impose democracy, freedom from outside. Of course you cannot impose freedom from outside. But we find out that you can impose dictatorship from outside simply by supporting dictators. And that's unfortunately exactly what so many leaders of the free world were doing. They were supporting, and they continue to support, royal Saudis, ignoring the fact what's happening there with the rights of women or with the freedom of religion. They supported and continue to support authoritarian regime of Egypt, ignoring the fact that practically every week there is another human rights activist sent to prison. They were supporting Saddam Hussein until the last day. Day before Saddam Hussein sent troops to Kuwait, leaders of Europe and the United States of America believed that he is a good, reliable partner who can guarantee stability. Decades before American president started speaking about promoting the freedom in the Middle East, decades before, that was already the place plagued with wars, with tyranny, and with repression. Was Middle East safer before America started talking about promoting democracy? Was it safer in the 70s, when Jordan had to fight PLO in Syria, when Lebanon was almost destroyed by civil war, when the Iranian regime emerged and the American diplomats turned into refugees? Was Middle East more safe in the 80s, when the American airplane was blown up by Libya, when in Beirut, in one suicide bombing, hundreds of American soldiers were killed, when 1 million citizens became victims, killed or wounded in the war between Iran and Iraq? Has the Middle East been more safe in the 90s, when Kuwait was swallowed up by Iraq, when missiles were falling on Tel Aviv and Riyadh, when Twin Towers survived their first attack of the terrorists, and when Al-Qaeda published its famous fatwa about killing Americans? Promoting democracy in the Middle East is an excellent idea. By the way, I'm buying by two hands the idea that it has to be connected with human rights, that the policy of the free world in the Middle East has to be connected with the question of human rights. That's exactly what I was promoting for all my years. Unfortunately, all the administrations of the United States of America in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s never did it. Promoting democracy in the Middle East is an excellent idea. The first thing is how we can do it. It's very difficult to overcome the resistance of all those who don't want democracy there.
One.
And that's a very important question. But it's not the question which we are discussing today. Until this day, the question which is discussed is whether it is a good idea or not. The March of Freedom, ladies and gentlemen, is very difficult. It will not succeed in one day, but there is no alternative. Great struggle is between those who, on one side, those millions, hundreds of millions in the Middle East, who want freedom, and those who want to deprive them of freedom. The problem is that sometimes we forget on whose side we are. The world was blessed, and I personally was blessed, with America which always knew on what side it is. America which knew that this divide between free world and fair societies is much more important than the divide between Republicans and Democrats, between this and that government. America which knew that the idea of freedom is bigger than any president, any party, any country.
Thank you, Natan Sharansky. Speaking against the motion.